everybody. Welcome to our new episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies. And on this episode, even though it's a little late, just a tad, just a little bit.
It's okay. January is not over, so we're not completely late.
Yeah, and hopefully we should get this released before January is over. We wanted to release kind of our favorites and least favorites of 2016, and kind of get this out there. And remember, these are personal opinions, obviously, and Dakota and I aren't, unfortunately, professional critics and don't get a chance to see every single movie, and not every movie comes here or comes when in time, and you know, all that kind of type of jazz. And so bear that in mind as you're watching this. Obviously, that hopefully is common sense that obviously these are our opinions. But how we're going to do this is I'm going to do the best list, and Dakota's going to do the worst movies list.
Yes.
But from our own slants of opinion, and in the case of movies that we saw. And unfortunately, there were just some that just slipped by us, and that's always unfortunate. But it happens, and eventually we'll see them, or we won't see them. But but if we really want to see them, we will. But anyway, with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Should we start with the worst, Dakota? Do you want to start with your number 5? We're each going to do 5, starting with our number 5, and work to our number 1 best or favorite and number 1 least favorite. So, Dakota, you want to go ahead and start?
Yes.
All right, so here's Dakota's number 5 worst movie, in his opinion, of 2016.
All right. Right off the bat, I'm going to start out strong. And I'm going to forewarn you, don't start sharpening the pitchforks just yet.
Do it. Sharpen the pitchforks. Sharpen the pitchforks.
My
I already got a chant.
Worst movie of 2016, number 5, Zootopia.
Why you... Oh, wait, I kind of agree with you.
This movie was incredibly overhyped and just wasn't all that good. And for a movie that was about breaking stereotypes, it relied pretty heavily on stereotypes.
Well, that was kind of the thing. It was trying to ride that line of satirizing cliche
while reinforcing
while
them.
Making it kind of cliche. But you won't catch me sharpening a pitchfork because you said this. I didn't really care for this movie a whole lot either.
Yeah, it's the animation is pretty good.
Animation's great.
Yeah,
colors are good. All that jazz.
It's just the story is incredibly weak. I found myself actually rooting for the main character to get eaten.
Yeah, you just didn't.
Like 40 minutes into the movie.
And yeah, just some of the whole character thing is like, okay.
Man, I just really struggle to kind of just focus on this movie. I just didn't care for it at all.
Well, and I didn't care for the bunny or the fox. Like,
yeah.
I just didn't. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm sure a lot of you love this movie, own this movie, watch it on Netflix every day, whatever. But yeah, not a bad choice. And remember, it's not at the top of his list, so he does think there's worse ones. So calm down. But let's go over to my number 5 favorite.
All right, what do you
now,
got?
I will give a little disclaimer, a little footnote here, or wherever I'd put it, maybe an introduction, that for the sake of broadening the list beyond being from one genre, these aren't necessarily like my top 5 of the year so much as just 5 that I thought were good for different reasons that are not all from the same genre or type of movie and things. That being said, my number 5 is a movie that I found extremely enjoyable. Well, I don't know if enjoyable is the right word. It was entertaining, I should say. And that was the movie Hush.
Are you sure this is your 10 best list?
Yeah.
The way you just said that. Like, you weren't quite sure if this movie was that good or not.
Oh, no. I like this movie. It's just that I struggled because I could have made my top 5 just all the exact same type of movie, but that would have been kind of boring. And so I wanted to kind of change it up with, like, this is one of the ones I really liked that came out last year, but maybe it would be like number 6 or 7, or something like that. Is basically what I'm getting at.
So it was in the top 10 list.
It would be in the top 10.
Ah.
Yeah. But we were only doing 5, and so I tried to push my 10 into 5 for the sake of diversity, which Zootopia would be proud of me, having diversity. But, and yes, Hush. And what this was is a really kind of a flew under the radar movie, and part of it was that it was kind of, I think, a Netflix exclusive release. And so it is on Netflix. And the main star in it, the girl, she actually wrote it also. And what it was, it's about a woman who lives alone and is a writer who is deaf. And so you see her just kind of living in her world and how she functions in her world that is quiet because of her disability or handicap. And she has a neighbor woman that she's befriended with where she lives. She lives in kind of like an isolated place, and this neighbor woman is learning sign language as they become better friends, so they can communicate with each other, better than having to do the whole reading lips thing all the time and things like that. But what happens is this person comes along, this stranger comes along, and you're not even entirely sure why he's there. But it's kind of one of those where he's just kind of one of those people that does pop up, unfortunately, every once in a while in reality, too, where he's not a good guy and just wants to terrorize people, every once in a while you just get one of those kind of twisted people. And he wears this mask to cover his face, but in his watching of this house realizes that she is deaf and starts doing these things where he's basically, how they build on the tension in his movie is he's like moving like right behind her, or like, it doesn't even matter how much noise he's making because she doesn't hear that. It would have to be like a vibration or something for her to really pick up on it. And so they kind of play on that whole tension and things like that. But what I really liked about this movie was just the tension it built, and then watching her kind of fight through this situation, and even though she has this disability, just see her kind of fight through this guy who's terrorizing her, really trying to, just mess with her and torture her and do whatever to her. But it's just kind of a really interesting movie, and the acting is really good in it, with the 2 stars. The guy who's in it is actually a guy who's starting to show up in more things. I think his name is John Gallagher Jr., I believe is his name. He's starting to pop up a little bit more in things, and I've seen him in other things that I really enjoy him in. And yeah, but this movie was just like I said, just a really tight, interesting little thriller that is on Netflix if you want to watch it. And the main girl in it, I haven't really seen her in anything else. Kate Siegel, she's the one who wrote it and starred in it. I saw her in like a eye commercial or something one time, but that's about it. But that's my number 5, one of my 5 favorites I'm bringing up. So Dakota, what's your next one? Your number 4 worst of the year. Let's go back into your cesspool of movies.
Oh man, this one, I can honestly tell you, I really regret seeing. It was so bad that I am at a loss for words to describe to you people just how bad. Robert De Niro is responsible for some of the best characters in film that I think I've ever seen.
Yes.
Like, all throughout his acting career, up until recently, he's been in these horrendous pieces of crap. And the worst of the worst is easily Dirty Grandpa.
Didn't like that movie, huh?
No, it is so bad that I cannot believe that Zac Efron is in this. Yeah,
Well, it's not like he's like a
I never thought
great actor or anything.
I never thought I'd say that. And I actually felt bad for Aubrey Plaza just because of what she went through in this film. And it just, I don't know, it's just
Her bank account might not care.
Oh man, I don't know even what to say about this film other than I would avoid it at all costs. The jokes are just not funny at all. They'd be funny in like a 1970s like kind of really cheesy, like really X-rated film maybe.
Maybe.
But in today it's just why did this film need to get made? I don't know what they were trying to accomplish here.
Well, they were just hoping that, hey, maybe you'll think seeing this old movie star be raunchy will be funny to you.
No.
And Dakota's answer is no. Stop it.
Yes, Robert De Niro, I don't know how much they paid you for this movie, but it was really not worth it.
Yeah, he probably took a pay cut to do it. No, just kidding.
Oh, man. I'm pretty sure if you need to be doing roles like this, I don't know, start selling drugs. Don't take roles like this anymore.
He'd rather him sell drugs.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, with that, let's go over to my number 4. Number 4 in my list for what I thought was one of the better movies of 2016. May come as a shock if you listen to our episode about this movie, because I was pretty harsh on it in a lot of respects. But it's Rogue One, Star Wars story. And the reason I have to put this on this list is just because even though I struggled with this movie and I'm still not totally sure how I feel about it, it still was a very interesting movie, entertaining movie, and I thought still had some qualities to it that I really liked, and I did think that some of the new angles they brought to the Star Wars universe were cool and clever, and ideas they had and ways they kind of decided to maybe explain some past things that's happened in movies, in the Star Wars movies, was interesting. And I thought there was enough of that made it good enough to make it into my top movies I saw last year, just because even though there were things I struggled with, and a few I just won't bring up just because I have a thing about spoiling things for people too much, but that I just struggle with, I still found this movie, like I said, to be just kind of an interesting movie. And I think just one of the things that could have, without even, I think the one main thing they could have fixed or done differently that would have made me be more okay with this movie, even setting aside some of the other little things, which, I could get over, was just to help me care about the people in it. Just, how I walk away and don't even really remember what their names were. Still kind of baffles me. I'm like, because usually, even the worst Star Wars movie, you walk away knowing everyone's names.
Yeah.
And with this one, I was like, man, it's like, here I sat through this whole movie with these people and I can barely remember their names. And I think it's just because you just had trouble caring.
You know what helps?
Or if you knew their names, it's because they were brought up so much before the movie came out. But
you know what helps?
What's that?
I look at Diego Luna's character and I'm like, Space Spaniard.
Space Spaniard.
I look at
Space Asian, Space Spaniard, Space British person.
No, he's Space Australian.
Space Australian.
And then I don't want to ruin anything, but Space guy who may or may not have passed away a while ago.
Yeah.
Without spoiling anything.
Yeah. And then what would Mads Mikkelsen be? Space Danish? Or what is he? Is he Danish?
Yeah, he's Danish.
Space Danish guy.
Space Dane. There
Space
you go.
Dane. Space Dane. That should be a movie.
There you go.
But yeah, so Rogue One, still had a lot of great qualities to it, where was like I still found it enjoyable. It's just kind of one of those things where you know, no movie's perfect, but still a great movie.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't envy you making this list. For me, 2016 had some really great movies, but it seemed like I saw more crap than I did.
Well, there were a lot of disappointment
great
movies.
Ones, and that movie, the ending of it just kind of blew me away. Like, it was just epic, and I loved every moment of it. So I'd be tempted to put it probably higher on my list. So that's why I say I don't envy you.
Yeah.
And I remember last year I was like, don't give in to the hyperbole, Steven. Don't put The Force Awakens as number one, and you did.
I did, but I still stand by that.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's a great movie.
Yeah. Because I still think that movie's great. It isn't like it's worn off or anything. So,
yeah.
Dakota, what's your next terrible movie? We're getting.
Right.
I'm just going to say terrible because we're getting up into the top three now.
We're getting deeper into the cesspool, people.
We're getting into the muckety muck.
All right, number 3. This one is going to come as no surprise,
except maybe that it's number 3.
I'm going to say Ghostbusters because they changed the title of it to something weird after the movie came out. What was it? Ghostbusters Answer the Call?
Yeah, was that officially a subtitle?
No, it wasn't till after it came out.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, they had an idea that they were going to make a whole series of movies off this, but it bombed just so badly, and rightly so.
And I find it interesting because this movie ended up being kind of a mixed, where some people are sticking it on their favorites of 2016, and then a lot of people are making sure it's not on their favorite 16 list. And I think it's because of just how you're going into how you're feeling about it. Because I think the people putting on their best list is like, oh, it's just great to see a movie with the funny women in the leads, and things like this. And they're stuck in this bubble of optimism toward women in lead roles and not really worrying about if the movie was good.
It's the director of this movie, and the stars of this movie have actually been in some really have made some really good entertaining movies. This is not one of them. When you watch it, it really makes you kind of just scratch your head and go, "What were they thinking?" And the Fall Out Boy remake of this song of the classic Ghostbusters song actually makes you just want to like grab some railroad spikes and shove them in your ears. So
it's Fall Out Boy.
So you never have to hear the song again.
Fall Out Boy does that to you.
Yeah, it's just, oh man, the movie. Like,
Hemsworth couldn't even save it.
I'm not even sure if I could sum up the plot to you because it's so convoluted. And
they were women who decided they were going to get rid of the ghost problem. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a line from this movie. I don't know if I could say it. But it essentially goes, ain't no witches with the bee gonna catch no ghosts. And I stand by that statement. I stand by that statement.
Oh boy. Well, that's exciting. We'll go on to my number 3 here. My number 3 is probably a little controversial, however you want to say it. Just because I put it on my list at all, or that it's in my top 3. But I just found this to be a fun, well-made movie that, even though it was a remake of sorts, reboot, remake type thing, was able to, for the most part, be its own thing. And that's why my number 3 pick is The Jungle Book. Why I say for the most part be its own thing is because there were a few moments where they had to nostalgically throw in some of the classic songs from the Disney cartoon Jungle Book, and only one of the three really worked in the realm of the movie, that being the fact that they just kind of had to be a little moment where they threw in bare necessities, but otherwise, I Want to Be Like You ended up being probably the most awkward part of the movie, probably since they decided to introduce King Louie's character as being a Colonel Kurtz of sorts from Apocalypse Now, and so all of a sudden having him break into I Want to Be Like You jive just kind of ended up being awkward. But those little things aside, I thought the voice casting of this movie was really well done. I thought everyone was just great in the roles they had, and I thought that boy who played Mowgli was just great because he was having to play off of green foam blocks and things like that, and how he seemed like a jungle boy running through the jungle. And so all that being said, it just made it end up being a really all around just fun movie. And I'm just kind of surprised at the end of the year this hasn't been getting brought up more. And I think it's because everybody, when they make their best list, has to throw on like all the Oscar buzz movies, and we kind of don't sit back and think about, well, what were the ones that were just really enjoyable but aren't necessarily going to win all the awards. And that's where you kind of come to like, well, The Jungle Book would fit that category pretty well. As just being kind of a fun movie. And gal, it's like you wouldn't think anybody could play Baloo better than Phil Harris, but Bill Murray really gives the Baloo role just kind of a new spin that was really fun. And it was just great to see Ben Kingsley nailing it again, because he doesn't get many great roles these days as Bagheera. And then the growly voice of Idris Elba doing Shere Khan was just great. And just, like I said, just ended up being a real great decisions made on how they did a lot of aspects of this movie, from visual to audio, that I just really enjoyed. And that's why it's up on my list. So, Dakota.
I disagree, but that's me.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's definitely my most controversial.
Yeah.
So,
well, that one I think is just maybe a tad too polarizing, maybe. I think people just kind of have some strong opinions about it, which I don't really get when people get too worked up about a movie. It's like, hey, it's just a movie. It's not like it, insulted your mom, shot your dog with a pellet gun or something.
Made grandpas look bad.
All right, then. Now we're moving to the meat of the potato.
Ooh, number 2.
Getting a little closer to number 1.
Number deuce.
Oh, this one sure is a deuce.
Dropping a deuce right now.
Independence Day.
This is a pretty bad deuce.
One of my favorite movies of all time, Independence Day. It was a perfect action/sci-fi film that just had endless quotable lines, memorable moments.
Yeah, the right kind of like cheesiness, all that type of jazz.
Yeah, it was a perfect blend of things.
Yep.
And then you wonder just how they could screw that all up.
I know how. 2 decades.
Yeah, they waited too long, and a lot of people say that by not having Will Smith in this, that it kind of doomed the whole venture, but
definitely probably didn't help.
You really got to wonder, would it have been better had he been in it?
Not if he Bill Pullman'd it.
Oh, man, they would have ruined his character, too.
Yeah, probably.
But Independence Day Resurgence, hands down, just hated it. That's right. I'm not sugarcoating this. It was.
You'll probably remember this if you listen to our summer recap episode. We weren't very kind to this movie.
Just trying not to fall asleep during this movie was a monumental effort.
Trying to watch this movie in one sitting is what I found a monumental effort. which is why I think it took 2.
So much so that even Hercules was like, "Wow, that's impressive."
And I held the world up.
Very rarely when I go to the movies do I try not to take bathroom breaks or go to the concession stand. This movie, I intentionally went to the bathroom,
drank more liquid to go to the bathroom again.
Slowly walked to the concessions and got a refill on my pop. And the whole while, I'm just thinking, oh man, this movie's horrible.
And you're realizing you probably didn't miss anything.
Yeah, I came back, didn't care where the characters were, didn't care what had happened. The movie just plodded on. And I don't know, it boggles the mind that from the same people, essentially, who brought us the first Independence Day, they're responsible for this crap. And
yeah, and I think, you know, what helped with the first one is that the there were really essentially kind of 3 main people you followed in their worlds. Jeff Goldblum, Will Smith, and Bill Pullman.
Yeah.
And they were all compelling in their own right. Whereas Goldblum, even though he was in this again, just couldn't do it on his own. Nobody else around him was compelling or looked like they even knew what was going on, or were just, I mean, it was just like, I'm sorry, but I'm still waiting to see Liam Hemsworth in a movie I think he's good in. I've never really cared for that guy. You know, his brother Chris has had some shining moments, but Liam just hasn't, in my opinion.
This was kind of a bad year for the Hemsworth brothers, I guess.
Yeah, that's true, because you brought up Ghostbusters, and that had Chris Hemsworth,
but very, very seldom.
Well, it's because Chris decided to sit out Civil War. He would have been. No, but yeah, just a rough one. So
very seldom do I tell people to avoid movies. But this one time, I think there was probably about a half a dozen people who all had loved the original one, who were excited for this movie, and I was like, "You gotta pass it up, man."
You're just like, run away.
You gotta. I was like, just let it go. Just let it go. Pretend like nothing happened.
All right. Well, over to my list. My number 2. I realized I just referenced it a couple minutes ago because my number 2 is, unshockingly, Captain America: Civil War. I liked this movie. I really liked this movie. I loved this movie. I thought a lot of what they did with it was really cool. I think they did a good job of pulling off the many different things they were doing. It stayed a Captain America story and a Captain America movie, essentially, but that they were still able to bring Iron Man into it, but make sure it was still a Captain America story. And bring in that whole aspect of really, like, the Avengers issues that were going on and brewing, but still leave it as a Captain America story. And even bringing in Spider-Man and how much Spider-Man and his moments in that movie did kind of steal the show a little bit, it still was a Captain America movie. And I just liked how they were able to balance all that into kind of one great conglomerate movie. And even though people now kind of have their little problems with things, I think some of that is justified, and I mean, I see that too, but I think some of it is like you just try to want to find like your problems with something, because I think when you look at, I would say one of the problems people had was when they were fighting each other, they weren't really fighting each other. It was more like, I'm sorry, I'm not really going to punch you, or they were still kind of quipping with each other. Well, it's because they were still friends. They were still friends, disagreed with each other, and they were trying to figure out how to balance that whole thing of disagreeing and not killing each other is kind of essentially what it became. And then I think the whole kind of culmination up there at the end, when it came to actually Iron Man and Captain America having to really personally face off against each other through a couple different issues, not one being ideology, the other being kind of more of a personal issue between things Captain America knew and things that Iron Man was finding out, is you do get a lot of great moments, because one of the things I was worried about was like, was this movie gonna earn what they were trying to set up? And I think this movie did earn that, did earn the things that happened in it, and just thought it was a great movie. And even though another thing that people complain about is that the Spider-Man thing was like forced fan service, it's like, yeah, but it worked. Even if it was fan service, it worked, and it got everybody excited for the movie that's coming out this year. The Spider-Man movie's coming out this year. And so yeah, sometimes fan service is an okay thing, and I think the new Star Wars movies are proving that you can have fan service that isn't just flat fan service, but can kind of be for something more. So that does work sometimes, and I think Civil War was able to do that a little bit too, and so that's why it's on my number 2. But Dakota, let's go back over into your muck. We're at your number 1 now. This is the big deuce. This is the diarrhea of diarrheas, in your opinion, for 2016.
Lordy.
So what is your crap pile of a movie that you got at number 1?
Oh, man. It was so hard to kind of pick a number 1. It really was. I saw, going back to what I said.
It's going to be La La Land. I just know it.
Going back to what I said earlier, I saw so many crappy movies. Masterminds, the latest Tarzan movie. Warcraft on second viewing is, I don't know.
Worse?
Yes. Because you just wish it had been all about the orcs and that the humans has just been a small fraction.
I feel the same way when I watch Lord of the Rings. Like, why couldn't this have just been about the orcs?
Anyway.
So what do we got here? What is it, Dakota? What is your number 1 dropped deuce of 2016?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what to say about this movie.
I know what he's going to say. I'm just waiting for him to say it.
I really don't want to, because then it forces me to think about the movie, and I get a headache. I just get a headache, and I need to lay down.
Oh, man. Don't get too worked up, man. It's just a movie.
The Alice in Wonderland movie that came out a few years ago, folks, well, although not a very great film, it was kind of enjoyable. It had its moments.
It's pretty bleak.
The young lady who played Alice was certainly very charming, and she was able to kind of keep attention focused on her throughout the whole movie. And of course, Johnny Depp, and the Mad Hatter, and yeah, it was an okay movie. There were some things that bothered me about it, namely the Red Queen, the White Queen, the kind of oversaturation of CGI to the point where it was very cartoony. Well, all those things I didn't like were brought back for this second movie.
And then some.
And they increased them by 1,000.
Yep.
Yeah, except this time we get Borat as Time. And apparently he's under the thumb of the Red Queen. Why? We don't know. He's Time, the master of everything. Apparently he still bows to the whims of the Red Queen. For what reason? We don't know. Do they care? No. And, speaking of which, way too much Red Queen in this. Way too much Red Queen. They go into the backstory of how the accident that caused her to have such a huge head.
Which is interesting because she's divorced to Tim Burton now, right?
Maybe.
I can't remember. I was just saying that's interesting if they are split up, where he still gave her a bigger part. No hard feelings apparently.
He didn't direct this one,
but he still produced it. But yeah, this one is called, what was it called? Alice Through the Looking Glass.
Alice Through the Looking Glass. Easily the worst film 2016. And if you think that's hyperbole, yeah, there's that word again. I dare you to watch it.
I think it's hyperbole. That's
okay. Okay, anyway.
So Dakota is saying steer clear at all costs of Alice Through the Looking Glass.
Yes, I cannot.
And if you like this movie, don't tell Dakota.
If you like this movie, odds are you're in an insane asylum.
Oh, wow.
And I am very grateful that you were there.
On behalf of the other half of this podcast, I would like to say I do not agree with all the statements and opinions said by Dakota right now. And
But there's honestly nothing redeeming about this movie. It kind of relied on cliche storytelling, horrible acting, crap CGI, and just, no, I didn't like it one bit.
Yeah, it's kind of too bad because Tim Burton kind of came out of the practical effects era, like is kind of where he got his start, kind of having that visionary look, but having to be very practical and real. And then, man, with these movies, he just went into like just yucky CGI that just doesn't look good.
Yeah, he went full Robert Rodriguez a la Sin City.
Yeah, like or Spy Kids or
Yeah.
something, where it's just like, just like too much cartoon. Unless it was a cartoon, like maybe they should have just made it a cartoon. But
there you go.
when you have that, it's kind of like the one of the struggles with the Star Wars prequels is just like having real people around all this cartoon stuff is kind of jarring, It's just hard to do well. But I don't know. Maybe Tim Burton. Maybe that's how he wanted it to look. Who knows? He's a strange cat. But
yeah, I kind of. Oh man, like I said, I hate talking about this movie just so much, and I'm
getting that.
It really confuses me because Johnny Depp
hasn't been good for years.
No, just he picks some good roles, but this one, it's like,
but not for years.
He's making a comeback.
With
not.
what?
The new Pirates of the Caribbean.
He hasn't been good for years. I'm including the Pirates movies.
Oh, okay.
Like, I mean, he's fine early, but I mean, if you look at just the last Pirates movie they made.
Hey, Black Mass was pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't catch that one, but yeah, I guess people did like him in that one, playing Whitey Bulger, but yeah, okay. Well, they cut over to mine. My number one favorite of last year is another thriller. This was just one of those movies that came out toward the beginning of the year, and I think it was a March movie, actually, when I think about it. Yeah, but I mean, it's still toward the beginning, the first quarter of the year anyway. But just was like, it almost just came out of nowhere. Like, nobody even knew it was happening until they released a trailer for it during the Super Bowl of that same year, and all of a sudden it was like, well, this movie's coming. And it was just ended up being just a surprisingly tight, great movie. And it's 10 Cloverfield Lane is my top choice, just because, mostly because of just how it was the one movie of last year that really just surprised me with like how tightly good it was in story and in acting and things like that. And it was just like so unexpectedly so, where this movie could have been anything. It could have just been another Ouija Origin of Evil, or just one of those other Blumhouse movies, that he makes $1 million of every year, and maybe 1 out of every 20 is good or something like that. But that's what this was. It was just like an out of left or out of right field, however that saying goes, low key, independently made movie that ended up getting attention just because J.J. Abrams was behind it and tied it into this Cloverfield, gave it the Cloverfield name. And but it's bigger than Cloverfield even, or smaller depending on how you say that, because it's its own movie, it's its own story, just using that kind of Cloverfield world as its setup. But Man, it's one of John Goodman's better performances I've seen him do in a while. I mean, he's had some good performances in the past, don't get me wrong, but it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, John Goodman has a pretty recognizable voice, and he's a big guy, and you're watching this movie going, kind of forgetting it was John Goodman, which, as I've said before, is like, it just reminds you that the guy can act. He's an actor. He's good. And I thought Mary Elizabeth Winstead was really good in this, playing the kind of damsel in distress at first, but very quickly you begin to realize that you see her start to fight and be like, kind of take things into her own hands and try to figure out this situation that's going on. And so it's kind of cool. You want to talk about, we're hard on Ghostbusters and stuff, but you want to talk about a female lead in a movie that was great and was good at portraying women in a good light, where she isn't just playing like the wimpy little crying victim. I mean, that would be Mary Elizabeth Winstead in 10 Cloverfield Lane. And then an actor I brought up earlier in my list who was in Hush, John Gallagher Jr., would be the other main guy in this movie. And I don't know, that guy lately, a few things I've seen him in is just like, don't really know him that well, but man, he's just great in these little supporting roles that I've seen him in lately. And so it'll be interesting to see if he ends up ever becoming kind of more of a lead, so to speak, in anything, but who knows. But I just thought this movie was, man, great. And if you haven't seen it because you think you have to have seen Cloverfield and you just don't care because you don't care, this movie is completely different than Cloverfield. You don't have to have seen Cloverfield to get anything or enjoy this movie. And so don't let that hold you back if you haven't seen it. And yeah. And so that would be my thing on that. But it's just my number one, like I said, just because it's like, wow, I did not expect that. But as Dakota said, 2016 overall, pretty mixed bag. Just like there were just a lot of mediocre to garbage movies, and then unfortunately there were some that seemed to have been shining lights that unfortunately I just haven't had a chance to see yet. Like Hacksaw Ridge would be one I want to see. Dakota, I don't think you saw that one either, right?
No, unfortunately it wasn't at the theater for very long.
Yeah, and so that was one I kind of missed out on that I would be curious, where that would land.
Well, with me, there
was a few others. I just can't think of them right now, right offhand. But out of the ones we saw, these are the ones we came up with. But sorry, what was that, Dakota?
I was gonna say, trust me, I did see some good movies this year. Some ones that years down the road I'll probably still be watching. Star Trek Beyond being one of them.
Yeah, and Star Trek Beyond was almost going to be on my list. In fact, in a way, maybe I am regrettable I didn't put on a list, so I'll just say that right now. But, yeah, that was a really great return to form for the Star Trek franchise.
Yeah. The Conjuring 2 I thought was pretty awesome. That one...
That was definitely a good follow-up if you like the first one.
Yeah, that was... I pulled that one out not too long ago to scare the crap out of one of my friends. So it was pretty great. And then, of course, people are probably wondering why I didn't put Suicide Squad or Batman v Superman on my list like some other people would, but I actually took some enjoyment from those movies.
Yeah, those would be kind of more in the mediocre. Because there were... Well, I don't know. I guess I didn't care about Suicide... But with BVS or Batman vs Superman, whatever you call it, it's like there were a few things in it where you couldn't call it a complete disaster, but, take it or leave it for what it is.
Yeah, there's some people probably hating on you because Deadpool wasn't in your top 5.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
To be fair, that movie isn't really for everyone.
No, and I'm highly skeptical that a Deadpool 2 can't say that. A sequel to Deadpool is actually going to work and be good.
I don't know. It will if they cast Pierce Brosnan as Cable.
Uh-oh, you're in that camp. So,
I was going for Dolph Lundgren personally, but
that won't happen. He can't act. But yeah, so I mean that's kind of where we're at with these lists, and so hopefully you enjoyed just us kind of talking about these movies, and maybe there were a few movies we helped you to avoid watching that you had on your to watch list, or maybe because of how terrible Dakota said they were, you have to watch it now just to see if Dakota's actually right.
I don't do this very often, but I would recommend shots before viewing any of these movies.
Just don't drive.
Several.
Please don't drive if you do that.
If you're a woman, I suggest a whole bottle of wine. If you're a guy, I don't know, whiskey maybe.
And with my list, mine are really just, maybe they're not the best of the year, or going to be at the award shows, but I just picked some entertaining movies. But yeah, like Star Trek Beyond would be an easy one to throw out there as another entertaining one for the year. And, there's a few others through the year, more family-oriented or more R-rated that still were pretty popular through the year. But overall, it just was kind of a I mean, Hollywood still had a lot of billion-dollar movies this past year, don't get me wrong, where they're going to be just fine. But we'll see what happens with this year. This year's another kind of spread through the year group of movies. So Dakota and I are kind of excited to see what this year brings, 2017. So
yeah, it's a little intimidating that the Lego Batman movie will be out pretty soon.
Geez, just a couple weeks away. I got a son who is very ecstatic about that.
Yeah, and then Logan will be out right after that.
Yeah, not too long after that, you got March, where you got like Logan and this Kong movie that could be good or bad, hard to say.
Yeah, then we got that Power Rangers movie, which will just completely, I think, underwhelm.
Hard to say what that one's going to do. I don't know. It probably would help if I were a Power Rangers fan, but since I'm kind of a middle ground on Power Rangers, like, I really don't have any feelings toward it at all either way.
It was kind of for me, it was one of those things I started watching after it became popular.
Yeah, I saw a few of like the later versions where it wasn't like the original Power Rangers, and so it's hard to get a real feel for it. But yeah, so I mean, here we're just talking about a few that are coming out just in this kind of late winter into spring time, and not even getting into summer when there's you got your Guardians of the Galaxies and Wonder Womans and those type of tentpole comic book movies and whatever else there are. So yeah, we'll see what happens, and we're excited to see those and to see which side of our list they make, the mucky side or the good side. So with that, I just want to remind you guys that to remember to subscribe to us if you haven't. We really appreciate that. It's nice to know that you're out there and caring about our show, and obviously when you do that, those things remind you, if you want them to, when our new episodes go up, and then so more or less just as quick as we put them up. And so that's kind of the nice thing about being a subscriber is it lets us know you're caring, but then we know you're hearing about our episodes the best way. Another way to hear about our episodes and other updates, we try to put on little movie updates as Dakota and I see them, is on our Facebook page and on our Twitter, where yes, you can find us on Facebook, Dakota Boys Talk Movies, and we are on Twitter. We are DBTM Podcast is our Twitter handle. So you can find us there on Twitter. And, of course, the whole iTunes, YouTube. And, obviously, we hope you're not afraid to communicate with us, whether through a comment on YouTube or a rating on iTunes or a suggestion or criticism or anything like that on Facebook or anything. We're always up for that, up for whatever you have to tell us, one way or the other, and anything like that. I can take it. Dakota can't, but I'll console him, so it'll be fine. So, no, I'm just kidding. Dakota's fine. So yeah, we hope you're not afraid to do that, and we will do our best to communicate back with you when you do ask us something or or something in that vein. So we're going to close out this episode though. So thanks for listening. This is Steven.
And this is Dakota.
Have a great night.